My mother called me crying for the very first time in my life. Her words pushed through the speaker, frantic and slurred, begging me to pack my bags and move into her house. She had suffered a massive stroke. She needed a live-in caregiver. And she expected me to abandon my entire life to nurse her. Before she even finished gasping out her demands, the memory hit me like a physical blow. 2 years ago, I was the one choking on my own sobs on a cold bathroom floor, bald from chemotherapy, fighting stage 3 cancer and begging her for a lifeline. I swallowed the bitter taste in my mouth, gripped the phone tight, and interrupted her panic. I gave her the exact 4 words she used to abandon me. I cannot deal either. I pressed the red button and ended the call. My pulse stayed perfectly calm. The only sound left was the steady, peaceful hum of my own home. My name is Megan. I am 31 years old, and I live in Denver, Colorado. I work as a medical billing specialist, which means my entire professional life revolves around reading fine print, arguing with insurance companies, and untangling bureaucratic nightmares. I am the person who finds the loopholes. I am the person who catches the lies. But for most of my life, I was completely blind to the lies inside my own family. My family operated on a very strict, unspoken hierarchy. My younger sister, Ashley, was the golden child. She was funded, coddled, and protected from every minor inconvenience the world threw at her. I was the spare parts. Because I was single and childless, my mother, Barbara, viewed my time, my energy, and my bank account as public property. I was the one expected to fix the leaky faucet, do the taxes for free, and drop everything the moment someone called. They called it being dependable. I now know it is called the single daughter tax. Everything shattered 2 years ago. I was 29 when the doctor sat me down and told me I had stage 3 cancer. The fear was paralyzing. It felt like the ground had vanished beneath my feet. I walked out of the clinic, sat in my car, and did what any terrified daughter would do. I called my mother. I told her the diagnosis, my voice shaking, and asked if she could just come over and sit with me. Her response did not contain an ounce of maternal panic. Instead, she sounded annoyed. She told me my timing was terrible because Ashley was in the middle of planning her wedding. Barbara actually called my cancer an inconvenience. She told me they were too busy with cake tastings and dress fittings to hold my hand. But the cruelty did not stop there. Barbara went out of her way to gaslight our extended family. She whispered to my aunts and cousins that I was exaggerating my illness, playing up the drama because I was jealous of Ashley's wedding spotlight. So I faced the nightmare alone. I went to every chemotherapy session by myself. I threw up in empty bathrooms. I watched my hair fall out in clumps while scrolling through social media pictures of my family drinking champagne at bridal showers. Worse, my medical bills were piling up. Even with insurance, my out-of-pocket costs skyrocketed to $50,000. I was drowning. I called my mother one last time, swallowing my pride, and asked if she could loan me $500 just to cover a utility bill. She sighed heavily, told me they were completely broke because of the wedding, and hung up. That was the moment the grief turned into suspicion. I knew Barbara's finances. I knew they were not entirely broke. My professional instincts kicked in. While sitting on my bathroom floor, hooked up to an anti-nausea drip, I pulled out my laptop and logged into the Denver County public property records portal. It is a system I use every single day for work. It took me less than 2 minutes to pull up the deed for the family home. A beautiful property worth $850,000. The truth flashed on the screen, cold and undeniable, right in the middle of my chemotherapy, right when I was begging for grocery money. Barbara had signed a quitclaim deed. She had legally transferred the entire $850,000 house to Ashley for $1 single. Why? Because my legal address was still listed at the family home. Barbara and Ashley were terrified that if I defaulted on my $50,000 of medical debt, the hospital might try to put a lien on the house. To protect their precious asset from my cancer bills, Barbara threw me to the wolves. She gave away the house to save her own equity, leaving me completely unprotected. Looking at that digital document, something inside me permanently broke. The desperate, hopeful daughter died on that bathroom floor. In her place, a cold, calculating survivor woke up. I printed the deed. I folded it neatly. I filed it in a plain manila folder and shoved it in the back of my desk. I never screamed. I never confronted them. I went back to the hospital and I fought for my life. During those agonizing months, I met Brenda. Brenda was a retired nurse in her 60s who took the chemotherapy chair right next to mine. She saw me shivering one afternoon and draped a warm teal blanket over my shoulders. She brought me ginger tea. She drove me home when my vision was too blurred to see the steering wheel. Brenda became my chosen family. She taught me that true care is an action, not an obligation. I beat the cancer. I worked grueling overtime shifts to pay down my $50,000 debt. I rebuilt my life from the ground up, keeping my family at an absolute arm's length. I waited. 2 years passed. Then the universe delivered its punchline. Barbara suffered a massive stroke. Her left side was paralyzed, and she required round-the-clock nursing care. But instead of calling me directly to ask for help, Ashley and her husband, Tyler, orchestrated an ambush. They invited the entire extended family to a lavish housewarming party at the stolen $850,000 home. They even invited me. I knew exactly what they were doing. A crowd makes a person easier to corner. I dressed meticulously, slid the folded deed into my purse, and drove to the house. The place looked sickeningly wealthy. Ashley had used the stolen equity to fund a massive kitchen renovation. The house was packed with cousins, aunts, and neighbors. Barbara was seated in her wheelchair in the center of the living room, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, playing the tragic victim. After dinner, Aunt Patricia, the loudest voice in the family, tapped her wine glass with a spoon. The room fell silent. Aunt Patricia looked right at me and delivered a sermon about family duty. She publicly demanded that I move into this house, quit my job, and become Barbara's full-time unpaid nurse. Ashley chimed in, perfectly on cue, weaponizing the single daughter tax. She told the room that it made the most sense for me to do it because I did not have a real family of my own. I did not have a husband or children, so my time was worthless anyway. The crowd murmured in agreement. They expected me to lower my head and submit. I set my glass down. I reached into my purse and pulled out the crisp, white sheet of paper. I dropped the printed deed right onto the newly renovated kitchen island. I did not raise my voice. I spoke with the clinical flat tone I use for hostile insurance adjusters. I announced to the room that 20 months ago, Barbara gave this $850,000 house to Ashley for $1 while I was bald and fighting for my life. The room went dead silent. Ashley's face drained of all color. I turned my attention directly to Tyler. Tyler was greedy, and he loved his wallet more than he loved his wife. I walked him through the Medicaid math. I explained that the state has a strict 5-year look-back period for Medicaid assistance. By giving away an $850,000 asset to dodge my medical bills, Barbara had triggered a massive penalty divisor. She was legally disqualified from receiving any state funding for her nursing care. I looked Tyler dead in the eye and delivered the kill shot because he and Ashley were the legal owners of Barbara's hidden assets. They were entirely responsible for her care. The private nursing facility Barbara needed cost $15,000 a month, and they had to pay every single cent of it out of pocket. Tyler's jaw dropped. The realization of his financial ruin hit him so hard, he physically stumbled backward. He immediately turned on Ashley, screaming at her about the renovations and the impending bankruptcy. Aunt Patricia tried to intervene, sputtering about family duty. I turned to her and shut her down instantly. I told her if duty mattered so much, she could take Barbara in. Patricia stammered, grabbed her purse, muttered an excuse about her bad back, and practically ran out the front door. The United Family Front shattered into pieces. Barbara looked at me, real tears streaming down her face now, and begged me to save them. That was when I delivered my 4 words, I cannot deal either. I turned my back on them, walked out the front door, and drove away. But toxic people do not surrender easily. A week later, I received a phone call from a medical collections agency. The $15,000 nursing home bill was defaulting. Tyler had threatened to divorce Ashley over the debt. And in a state of pure panic, Ashley decided to drag me down with them. She went into the basement of the house, broke the padlock on Barbara's old tax filing box, and stole my old W-2 forms. Using my social security number, Ashley logged into the nursing home's online portal and forged my signature, listing me as the primary financial guarantor for Barbara's care. Ashley thought she was being clever. She forgot what I do for a living. I did not call her to argue. I did not waste time screaming. I immediately contacted the nursing facility's risk management and compliance department. I formally triggered a suspected Medicaid forgery audit. To protect themselves from federal liability, their IT compliance officer instantly pulled the digital audit trail for the DocuSign signature. It took one glance at the screen to confirm the truth. The IP address linked to the forged signature belonged directly to Ashley and Tyler's residential internet account. I handed the packaged evidence straight to the state healthcare fraud investigator. The consequences were apocalyptic because it was an active felony wire fraud investigation involving healthcare funds. The state instantly froze the $850,000 house. Tyler, desperate to avoid federal prison, filed for divorce the very next morning, forcing a brutal liquidation of their remaining assets. Ashley was indicted for identity theft. Because the bills were completely unpaid, the private nursing facility evicted Barbara. She was transferred to a severely underfunded, state-run minimum care ward. I changed my phone number, deleted their emails, and went out to a steak dinner with Brenda, sitting in my quiet, peaceful living room tonight. I finally understand the twisted psychology behind it all. Toxic families view their scapegoats not as people, but as emergency funds made of flesh and bone. They use assets like houses and inheritances to buy the loyalty of their golden children. while fully expecting the scapegoat to perform the grueling labor out of a manufactured sense of guilt. Ashley's downfall was not just the law. Her downfall was her own arrogant assumption that I would never fight back. If you are listening to this, I want you to walk away with 3 unbreakable rules. Rule number 1, the single daughter tax is a scam. Your lack of a spouse or children does not make your body, your time, or your bank account a public utility for your relatives. Your life belongs to you. Rule number 2, real boundaries require enforcement, not just words. You cannot outlove a toxic family member. You cannot fix them with kindness. But you can absolutely outsmart them by using the very systems they try to abuse. Rule number 3, blood is just biology. Family is a choice. Family is the retired nurse who sits with you in the dark while chemicals drip into your veins. Family is the people who show up when you have nothing to give them. If the people who call you family only show up when they need your wallet, your labor or your absolute submission, ask yourself a hard question. Are they really your family? Or are you just their unpaid employee? Stop waiting for them to love you correctly. Protect your peace. Build your own table. And let them starve. Drop a comment below if you have ever been the family scapegoat. And subscribe for more stories about taking your power back. I know exactly what you are screaming at the screen right now. You are sitting there thinking, why on earth did she wait 2 entire years to drop the hammer? You are wondering why anyone would suffer through chemotherapy alone. Look at a stolen house deed. And just quietly put it in a drawer instead of burning the place down immediately. It is easy to judge from the outside. But let's talk about the actual psychology of family trauma. What Megan experienced is a textbook example of the slot machine effect, also known as intermittent reinforcement. When you grow up as the family scapegoat, you are conditioned to survive on crumbs. You keep putting coins into the machine, doing their taxes, fixing their problems, craving their validation because every once in a while they give you a tiny sliver of approval. Megan wasn't stupid. She was grieving. She was addicted to the hope that a cancer diagnosis would finally be the thing to make her mother love her. It takes time for the heart to accept what the brain already knows. Those 2 years of silence weren't weakness. They were the incubation period for her survival. Now, let's pivot to the street smart financial analysis. Because Megan executed a masterclass in self-defense, most people in her situation would have confronted the mother on the phone, cried, and screamed. What does that achieve? Nothing. Scammers and toxic manipulators thrive in emotional chaos. Megan used what I call the audit strategy. Instead of fighting with feelings, she fought with facts. She went straight to the public records. The moment she pulled that quitclaim deed, she removed all emotion from the battlefield. Then she weaponized the system they tried to abuse. Let's talk about the Medicaid look-back period. This is crucial real-world knowledge. You cannot just give away hundreds of thousands of dollars in assets for $1 to dodge medical creditors. The government wants its money, and they will penalize you severely for hiding it. Megan knew the math. By calculating that $15,000 a month penalty and dropping it in front of the greedy brother-in-law, she turned her enemies against each other. She didn't have to fire a single shot. She just handed them the grenade and walked away. And when Ashley tried to forge her signature, Megan didn't engage in family drama. She triggered a corporate compliance audit. She forced a $1 billion healthcare system to hunt down the IP address to protect their own liability. That is how you win. You don't fight the shark yourself. You drop blood in the water and let a bigger shark do the work. The ultimate takeaway here is about your worth. Love is not a debt you owe simply because you share a last name. You are allowed to walk away from people who treat you like a utility, even if they are your own parents. Trust is earned, not owed. Your peace is your most valuable asset. Protect it ruthlessly. If you have ever had to deploy your own audit strategy against a toxic relative, I want to hear about it. Leave your story in the comments below. Hit subscribe and keep your boundaries made of iron. See you next time. I know exactly what you are screaming at the screen right now. You are sitting there yelling, why on earth did she wait 2 whole years with that deed sitting in her desk? Why didn't she expose them the exact second she found out they gave away an $850,000 house while she was fighting cancer? It is incredibly easy to judge from the outside. But let me introduce you to something psychologists call the slot machine effect, also known as intermittent reinforcement. When you grow up as the family scapegoat, you are conditioned from childhood to survive on emotional crumbs. You keep pulling the lever, being dependable, fixing their messes, holding on to silence because every once in a while they drop a tiny coin of approval. Megan was not weak, and she certainly was not stupid. She was grieving the mother she never really had. She was hooked on the toxic hope that maybe, just maybe, a cancer diagnosis would finally be the thing to make them love her correctly. It takes a long time for the heart to accept the brutal math that the brain already knows. But once that hope finally died, Megan executed an absolute masterclass in financial self-defense. Let's break down her specific smart moves so you can use them to protect yourself. First, she used the audit strategy. Scammers and toxic manipulators thrive in emotional chaos. They want you crying, screaming, and acting crazy so they can play the victim. Megan did not scream. She logged into the county records and pulled the actual deed. Scammers hate details. By bringing cold, hard facts to a family guilt trip, she removed all of their power instantly. Second, she focused on building the case. When her sister forged that signature for the $15,000 a month nursing home bill, Megan did not call her sister to argue. Arguing gives the manipulator a chance to spin the story. Instead, she went straight to the corporate compliance office and pulled the digital IP audit logs. You do not fight a shark with your bare hands. You drop blood in the water and let a bigger shark like a state healthcare fraud investigator do the heavy lifting for you. Finally, she executed the buyout. Megan did not sue for her share of the house. She did not try to negotiate a truce or force an apology. She let the state freeze the assets. And she walked entirely away. Sometimes, walking away with nothing but your sanity is the highest return on investment you will ever make in your life. But the part nobody warns you about is what happens after the war is over. At first, I expected grief to come crashing back. I thought I would miss them. I thought I would wake up one morning and feel guilty for letting my mother sit in a state ward, for letting Ashley face the consequences of forging my name, for letting the house freeze under investigation. But guilt never came. What came instead was rest, real rest, the kind my body had been begging for since the day I first heard the word cancer. The kind of rest you only understand after years of living as someone else's emergency plan. I slept through the night without checking my phone. I cooked dinner without waiting for a crisis call. I sat in my living room with Brenda, drinking tea, and realized that love was not supposed to feel like a summons. One evening, Brenda looked at me and said something I will never forget. You were never hard to love, Megan. You were just surrounded by people who were committed to not loving you properly. That sentence broke something open in me, because for years, I thought the problem was my value. I thought if I earned more, helped more, forgave faster, stayed quieter. Maybe Barbara would finally look at me like a daughter instead of a backup nurse. But the truth was much simpler and much uglier. They did not fail to see my worth. They saw it clearly. That was why they kept trying to use it. Your strength can attract people who admire it, but it can also attract people who want to drain it. And if you grew up being praised only for what you could endure, you may confuse exhaustion with loyalty. You may think love means showing up even when you are bleeding. It does not. Love does not ask you to disappear so someone else can stay comfortable. Love does not punish you for surviving. Love does not hand the golden child a house and hand the sick daughter a hospital bill. So if you are the scapegoat in your family, hear me clearly. You are not the difficult one. You are not the bitter one. You are not the selfish one for refusing to keep carrying people who would step over your body and still ask where dinner is. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to let the truth sit on the table without cleaning it up for everyone. You are allowed to let grown adults meet grown consequences. You are allowed to choose the people who chose you when you had nothing left to give. That is what I did. I chose Brenda. I chose peace. I chose the quiet apartment, the clean phone, the life that no longer required me to earn love by surviving pain. And if Barbara ever wonders why I never came back, the answer is simple. The daughter who would have saved her died on that bathroom floor 2 years ago. The woman who survived owes her nothing. Here is the absolute truth. Love is not a debt you owe just because you share a bloodline. You are allowed to walk away from people who treat your life like a public utility, even if they are your own parents. Trust is earned. It is never owed. Your peace is your most valuable asset. Protect it ruthlessly. If you have ever had to deploy your own audit strategy against a toxic relative, or if you survive the slot machine effect in your own family, I want to hear about it. Leave your story in the comments below. Hit subscribe and keep your boundaries made of iron. I will see you next time.